The first black driver in the Indy 500. This outspoken disciple of heavyweight champ Muhammad Ali has long professed his driving greatness, but his career has suffered a couple of setbacks, some of which were self-inflicted. Now it appears last year's third-place Trans Am Series finisher is back on the Indy path. Willie says he'll drive the new Winkleman Team Lotus IndyCar in the Kart Series opener at Long Beach and the 500 next May. Al Unser Jr. had signed with Lotus for '85, but the team sponsorship fell through. Plan now is for Willie to do 2 races in hopes a sponsor can be found for the rest of the season. More from Daytona now, where 2-time Busch Clash winner Neil Bonnet proved a prophet last Sunday. Neil didn't qualify for this year's Clash, but as CBS color commentator, he said just before that 20-lap race, the key to victory is, quote, controlled, reckless abandon in the first couple of laps. As Jerry Garrett tells us, Terry Labonte knew exactly what Neil Bonnet meant.
Keep an eye on the next-to-last car in the field. That's Terry Labonte. He's about to throw caution to the wind to get ahead. To win the Busch Clash, Labonte knows he has to make a daring move to the front before the early leaders can run away from him. Here, Labonte goes to the inside and passes 4 cars at once. Diving into the turn 3 abreast, he wins a 200-mile-an-hour game of chicken for 5th place. Now he slipstreams past 3 more. In 1 lap, he's up to 2nd place and stalking the leader. Lap 5, and Labonte goes ahead for keeps with this pass of Cale Yarborough, who later blew an engine. The race's only incident came when David Pearson popped a tire and scraped the wall. After a caution for oil on the track, Labonte streaked away from runner-up Darrell Waltrip for an easy victory worth a whopping $65,000. Reporting for Motorweek Illustrated, this is Jerry Garrett.
A week of non-stop racing at Daytona leading up to tomorrow's 500 has produced some brilliant performances, topped by that of our champion spark plug Racer of the Week. We first take you back to Atlanta International Raceway last fall. Glenn Sears wins the ARCA 150.
Glenn Sears, congratulations, your first super speedway win.
My first win, period. First race I've ever won in my entire life.
Well, unfortunately, Sears' team went bust over the winter. He got a last-minute ride for the ARCA 200 last Sunday at Daytona, borrowed a transporter, but it broke down. Glenn barely made it to the track, fired up his race motor, and it promptly blew up, launching a piston through the window of a nearby truck. Not to be denied, Glenn borrowed a dirt track engine from a friend. He figured, quote, once you close the hood, the motor don't know where it is. Well, here's where that motor and Glenn Sears in the Blue 61 finished Sunday at Daytona. He went to the wire with big names Davey Allison and Red Farmer. They bumped on the last lap, and that left rags to riches Glenn Sears to win the ARCA 200. That extends Glenn's fledgling winning streak to 2 races in a row. For his performance in the face of adversity, Racer of the Week Glenn Sears now goes into the running for a new Honda Sabre motorcycle that will go to our 1985 Racer of the Year. And Helen Casey joins us now with a look at the abundance of short track activity down in Florida during Speed Week. Helen?
Dave, across the Sunshine State last week, there were stocks and sprint cars up and down the Gulf Coast. Bad weather and a poor turnout caused the cancellation of a midget meeting at East Bay Raceway near Tampa. But at New Symrna Beach, the late model and modified stars are winding up 9 straight days of racing this weekend. Defending late model champion Dick Trickle has been the big winner thus far with 3 victories. Last Monday night, David Rogers became the first New Smyrna Speedway regular to win a World Series feature in 19 years. And Richie Evans has 3 wins in the modified division. On the clay of the Florida State Fairgrounds at Tampa, George Snyder won last weekend's USAC Dirt Car feature, and Steve Chassie took the sprint car title. Bobby Davis Jr. swept both ends of an all-star sprint doubleheader at midweek. Former USAC champ Tom Bigelow crashed heavily in the second race. He was hospitalized briefly with a concussion and later released.
Our resident hockey expert, associate producer Jim Roller, got back on the ice last weekend, and we'll go mud bogging in Cleveland when Motor Week continues. Appreciate our next story. You need to know that our Jim Roller's passion for racing is rivaled only by his love for hockey. Here's Jim's report.
My traveling schedule for Motor Week has caused me to miss almost all of the Atlanta Amateur Hockey League games I was scheduled to play in this year, much to the delight of my team and chagrin of my opponents. So naturally, you can understand I was quite excited when Dave Despain told me I was coming to Minnesota for an ice event. But these are not the Minnesota North Stars, and our Steve Potter was the first to explain that I was here to push a throttle, not a puck. Conditions were perfect. There was ice everywhere, but the only skating I was destined to do was on 4 wheels. So with final instructions from my co-driver, Mary Sitch, not to wreck the car, it was time for my first practice. That's me with one headlight. Yes, I realize they don't come that way, but it really wasn't my fault. Besides learning how to drive sideways in practice, I learned fast guys kick up a lot of dust, and these cars can have a mind of their own. We also learned that Mary should start the race. She was a bit faster. But race day dawned with our car missing from the grid. Seems the very confused officials kept forgetting about us. There's probably a message there, but after some firm conversation, they let us start in the middle of the 42-car field. So with this less than graceful adaptation of a Le Mans start, my first ice race was underway. Go, Mary. Go, Mary. And did she go, moving into the top 15 by the end of her first 1-hour shift behind the wheel. So then it was my turn for a 2-hour shift, my total share of the 4-hour enduro. The first hour saw some consistent lap times, and I even passed a few folks. Then a mistake left me stuffed in a snowbank with a car covered in snow and a sticking throttle, which meant 2 more trips to the bank. Finally, it was time to turn things over to Mary. A quick check of the engine to unstick the throttle, and she was back in action. Mary turned some quick times in the final hour to salvage us a 16th place finish. By the way, hometown hero Tommy Archer of Champion Spark Plug Challenge fame won the thing, but he better watch out next year. For Motorweek Illustrated from a very cold Minnesota, this is Jim Roller reporting.
Our weekly visit with Chris Economaki finds the editor-publisher of National Speed Sport News on the road as well, hosting a very special function. The Boys Club of Chicago's annual racing banquet and fundraiser. 900 people turned out to hear Chris and several great race drivers. Now, we like to kid Economaki about how long he's been covering races. Listen to his account of America's first car race and see if it doesn't sound firsthand.
I wonder how many of you know that it all began here, really, on a cold and blustery Thanksgiving day 90 years ago in 1895. The very first auto race ever held in the United States started here in Chicago. A couple of cars struggled up to Elgin at about 35 miles an hour in the snow, but that was the first race.
Well, this annual Windy City Shindig has now raised over $250,000 for the Boys Club, with the help of such driving talents as 500 outside pole sitter Cale Yarborough, who give it their time to come. Grand National Stock Car champ Terry Labonte, a big hit this year. Likewise, Motor Week Racer of the Year, Mario Andretti, Kart PPG IndyCar champion. The man who brings in the stars and organizes this fast-growing banquet, IndyCar owner Dan Cotter, and Chris talked to him.
You were the man who thought of using racing as a catalyst for charity dinner. How did it all start?
Chris, it started a long time ago, back in 1973. I was in England, invited as a guest to the Springfield Boys Club, and found that they used European Grand Prix drivers, auto racing as an industry to support their club. And we did it in first time in 1977.
What was the turnout for the initial dinner?
So I remember it, Chris, was about 70 people.
And this year we had how many?
Very close to 900. With the weather problems we had, it was a great turnout.
And to Dan Cotter, a tip of the hat for a job well done on behalf of a good cause. Finally, to Cleveland, Ohio. Last weekend, evidence that the unusual things people do with motors can be big business. Consider that the Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team drew 1,500 fans to their home arena Thursday night. Friday and Saturday, the place was sold out. The attraction in Richfield Coliseum was 750 dump truck loads of mud. The stuff was hauled into the arena after the ball game and then well watered down for the benefit of a bunch of folks who enjoy running through it, or in some cases running around it, or in other cases just standing on the sidelines watching other folks run through it or around it. There's your proof some people will do anything for money. Now, what would one of these indoor shows be without one of these, the four-wheel drive car crushers? Mud bogging rules, simple. The guy who charges 200 feet through the slop the fastest wins. Classes range from stock to whatever the imagination can dream up. Unlimited class winner accountant Mike Zaul tells us what it's all about.
We started with a basic Jeep, and we put a 396 Chevrolet motor in it. We're developing somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 350 horsepower. The trick is to stay light and stay on top of the mud.
But Mike's creation pales in comparison to this. Silver Eagle, the world's first jet mud racer. 1,400 horsepower. This missile launches itself over the mud in just over 3 seconds. Bogger not Dave Cook has to shut off to avoid launching himself into sublunar mud orbit. You saw it here first. That's it for today on Motor Week. Tomorrow, the Daytona 500 rolls at 12:15 Eastern Time. Then next weekend, we follow the Winston Cup stars to the first Grand National short track of the year. Motorweek live next Saturday from the Richmond Fairgrounds Speedway in Virginia. And next Sunday, live beginning at 12:50 Eastern Time, flag-to-flag coverage of the Richmond 400 here on TBS Sports. You want my pick for the Daytona 500? Bill Elliott. But then I always pick Bill Elliott. For all of us here at Motorweek, I'm Dave Despain. We've got to go. We'll see you next Saturday.
Promotional assistance and a promotion fee paid by the Air Force Reserve. Be one of a kind in today's Air Force Reserve. Now more than ever, a great way to serve. Call toll-free 1-800-257-1212. Motorweek Illustrated was brought to you by Old Milwaukee Beer and Old Milwaukee Light. Two great tasting beers. It doesn't get any better than this. And by Dodge, makers of Ram Tough Dodge trucks, and by Dodge cars that will revolutionize your perspective of the road. We are Dodge, an American revolution.